As everyone is logging on, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. So welcome to tonight's webinar on sensory and gross motor parent strategies. I'm so grateful for our presenters tonight sharing their expertise. And let's see. Oh, well, that didn't work. I thought I had, there we go. Let me tell you a little bit about the Clovis Family Resource Center. I'm Leanne, and the Family Resource Center is housed with our district's early intervention program called City Kids, but we serve the whole school district. So we're here to help families navigate through early intervention, special education, educate you on your parent rights, and get connected to resources you might need out in the community or in the district. And this is the housekeeping I promised. Okay, and this is inaccurate. Do not use the chat feature. You can, but what we're going to use the chat for is if you want to put in there what you're, who you are. We would love to know that. You don't have to, but you can say hi in the chat. You can communicate with each other in the chat. I'm going to post the link to the handouts in just a minute in the chat. That's in a Google Drive, and you're welcome to check that out. The video is off. We are in webinar format, and so certainly every time there is someone who's not familiar with that format, we cannot see your videos. It is okay if you are in your pajamas. We promise we can't see you. You can eat, you can brush your hair. We don't care. You're okay. You're in a safe space. So so go ahead and be comfortable. Your mics are off, and again, the video is off. So what we would like you to do, though, is as we're going along, if you have questions, on the bottom toolbar, you're going to see the question and answer feature. Please use that if you have questions for the presenters as we go along. I'll be monitoring that, and we'll make sure those get answered. Lastly, there'll be a survey tonight. I'm going to post a link in the chat box again at the end of tonight. But if you don't get all of those resources, please don't worry. At tomorrow morning after the webinar, I'm going to send out an email to everyone who attended. It will have the link to all the handouts. It's going to have the link to the survey. You'll have your certificate of attendance, all the resources. You'll be set, so don't worry about it. And lastly, this is just a quick disclaimer. This is for educational purposes. The Family Resource Center is for parent-to-parent support. So we're just here to support you. So please don't try and, hold me accountable for, I don't know, that you don't like the color of the screen, okay? we're trying, we just, we love families, and we're just trying to help you, okay? So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and Nikki Cornell, one of our district PTs who we love and adore, is going to start presenting, and I'll let her introduce herself. While she gets set up, I'm going to send out a poll. Okay, so if you would like to just tell us what your role is in attending tonight, we would love to know that. All right, Nikki, it is all you.
All right, thank you so much, Leanne. Good evening, everybody. It's good to see everybody, or at least know you're here. I can't see your screens, but and love getting this poll information about who's here tonight. We really appreciate you taking the time. I'm going to share my screen now for our presentation tonight to talk about gross motor skills. Okay, so we've got, let's see here, we've got lots of parents, some professionals, and a good mix here, community agency and college students. That's great. I hope everybody tonight can find something that they like. Are you sharing the results, Leanne, or am I? I can't hear you. You want me to share it?
It was okay. It was, you just shared the results by
Oh, I
verbally.
did.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's
Great.
okay.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, perfect. Good job.
Okay. Okay, so off we go. A little bit about myself. Again, as Leanne said, I am one of the district physical therapists for Clovis Unified. I have been a pediatric physical therapist since I graduated from PT school from Fresno State in the year 2000. So I've been doing this for a while. I worked at Valley Children's early in my career. I spent about 15 years there, and then I came over to Clovis Unified in 2009. And I've been here doing this job, which I absolutely love. In my job as a physical therapist at Valley Children's, it was very different. It was medically oriented. It was really impairment based, looking at remediation of certain impairments with a high range of kids from 0 all the way up to 22. But here in the district, what I do mostly is I work in special education, and I really work to make sure that our kiddos are accessing their school environment physically the best way that they can, so that they can be independent and successful. So I work with kids, again, from 3 and up, different types of diagnoses and disabilities, but a lot of our kids have a lot of gross motor challenges. And so I try to support them there. So if you have any questions tonight, just let me know, okay? So just a basic overview, what are gross motor skills? So it's a very broad term. What does it encompass? And basically what it encompasses is all the skills that require coordination of the large muscles of the body. And so these are the things that you and I do every single day just to participate in life in whatever manner that is, whether it's we're getting up and going to work, or we are getting out of bed, or we're going to school, or we're going to play. We need these gross motor skills in order to be able to sit, to stand, to walk, to be a student at school, or to do our jobs. So they help us to physically participate successfully and independently in all of our different roles in life. So they're very important. Gross motor skills are built upon several foundational areas, and we'll kind of do some overview of that tonight, and also motor milestones, okay? So what are motor milestones, okay? Motor milestones are basically, they are the way that we track gross motor skill development. We focus on them highly, in terms of when we look at infants and young toddlers, we really try to make sure what is happening motor-wise. It's a way to track skills. It is generally a predictable sequence of events that occurs, usually related to age, okay? So when I say I'm working with a baby who might be 3 months of age, in my mind, I have this expectation that they are going to be doing certain motor skills, and other motor skills they will not have attained yet. Okay, so it kind of gives us this overview and a guideline of what to expect at certain ages and then what's coming next. And I just want to stop here for a minute and make sure that everybody understands that even though we have this predictable sequence that is very familiar, if you've done anything with children, if you have your own children, if you go to the pediatrician and they've talked to you about those motor charts and things like that, we know that there's these kind of expectations. But the other part of that is knowing that our children are individual. Okay, so every child is very different in terms of how they will develop. Some kids will skip certain skills. Some children will do skills earlier. Some children will do skills later. Some children take a really long time to learn one skill. And so being knowledgeable of that and giving grace to your kids, whether it's your children or your students that you're working with, is really important to come to the table with. And most motor milestone development is influenced by many factors. Primarily we're talking about how is the brain developing after birth? How is the musculoskeletal system developing after birth? And those things sort of lead the charge with the development of motor milestones. But there are also other things that impact motor milestone development. And those are things that are kind of coming from maybe the outside environment, or if the child has health concerns. Healthy children are going to have the best odds of succeeding in terms of their gross motor skills, or really in any area, right? But when children are having health challenges, or they have certain diagnoses, or maybe they had health challenges when they were younger and it sort of delayed them, sometimes we see that those delays persist. Also, we know that the environment is very influential in developing motor skills. And from seeing who's here tonight, I can see that you're part of the environment of a lot of children. And yes, you are an important part of really kind of developing and helping to progress those gross motor skills. I used to work at Valley Children's, and when I did, I would tell my families, make sure you go home and put your baby on the floor and play with them for play with them and make sure you get them on the floor, make sure you get them on their tummy. And then that was kind of one of my early years as a PT. I still say the same things now to my families, but I come to it with the understanding that every family at home has a different way of doing things. Families have individual concerns. They may be very frightened to put their children on their tummy. They may not have a safe, secure space at home to put a child on the floor. And these are barriers, honestly, to providing those experiences. And so we want to be, cognizant that that's a part of the environment, is a part of creating opportunity for kids, and it can impact positively, and it can also decrease opportunities as well. All right, so the principles of motor development. So, overarching everything, we're talking about basically how is the brain developing, the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord, and then the muscular system. That is driving most of motor development. But also there's these other umbrellas over that as well. And what we know about this is it can be applied to any gross motor skill, really, not just from 0 to 12 or from 1 to 2 years of age. Really, when we start talking about even preschool and elementary school age children, we can still apply these principles when we're talking about how to add challenge or how to subtract challenge to children, okay? We know that development usually precedes that second bullet there, cephalocaudal. That's a mouthful to basically say that generally development is going to start with the head and move down the body and progress down to the feet. It's very typical. I'm sure you've all been around an infant, right? Newborn, when they're born, they need lots of support, their entire body. Pull them up to your shoulder. You've got to hold their head because their head's going to drop, okay? And then what we start to see as they get a little bit older, well, maybe we don't need to hold it all the way. Maybe we can lower our hand. Maybe sometimes, most of the time they got it, but they might so they're developing that strength. And then pretty soon they've got a little bit of upper body strength. So we start to see it just kind of moving down that way. We also note that development will go from proximal to distal. That's that third bullet there, okay? And what that means is that we need to develop control in the center of our bodies, okay? Head and the trunk and the hips, before we start to develop control of the extremities and the things that are far away from our body, okay? We need that head and neck control. We need a strong core so that we can then move that arm on a stable base. So that is another kind of principle that we apply in all motor skills, okay? And then the last one there, simple to complex, simple tasks, okay? They are just exactly what it says. It may be a single movement at one joint. It could be just, let's see, reaching up and touching my head, just like this, okay? So maybe I'm just gonna bend my elbow and touch my head and straighten my arm. Okay, that's a simple movement. A more complex movement is going to usually involve multiple movements at multiple joints, okay? And involve maybe even the fingers and the extremities like farther out. So if I'm gonna just reach up and touch my head, that's pretty simple. But now if I'm gonna throw a baseball, well, now I've gotta reach all the way back. I've gotta hold the ball, I've gotta come forward, and I've gotta release it. So much more complex movement. And those principles can also be applied to your skills, your gross motor skills. These are the building blocks of typical motor skill development, okay? And I will talk a little bit about each of these. But they're all foundation. You need to have each one of these in order to have a typical progression and continued progress in gross motor skills, no matter the age, okay? Strength, flexibility, balance, coordination, body awareness, and motion sense. And all of these are important Our senses are intertwined with motor. Anna is going to talk about that in her presentation as well. It is impossible to separate the sensory system from the motor system. They are a feedback loop, and one works off of the other. In the same way, all of these items are also very intertwined. It's almost impossible to separate them sometimes. So when we talk about strength, it's the ability to control our bodies against gravity. Okay, we are all on this earth fighting the force of gravity on our bodies, and it doesn't stop. It starts when you're a newborn and it doesn't ever stop. Okay, so I love my little friend here. He is planking here out over the pillow, and this requires an incredible amount of strength. We want to be able to use our muscles to lift ourselves and to control our bodies safely. Okay. Strength is measured in gross motor milestones for young children. Normally, we don't use the same strength measures that we would use in adults, okay? But the principles of overload still apply. So when we talk about overload, it's how we build strength. It is in order to build more strength, we have to progressively overload. So if I go to the gym this week and I lift a 5-pound weight on my bicep, okay, and I do that, well then next week, if I want to get stronger, I need to go up in weight, and maybe I'm going to do an 8-pound weight, and then I'm going to keep going and I'm going to do a 10-pound weight. So that overload for children is introduced in the way of the fact that their bodies grow, they get longer, they get heavier, and then lots and lots of practice. So that overload kind of creates that demand for strength, and then we see those strength increases, okay? Health is a big part of strength as well. Health is going to impact really all of these building blocks. If their children are not healthy, we see deficits in all of these different areas, okay? And then I'll talk a little bit about muscle tone. And this is always sometimes a confusing thing for families that I hear from families. But muscle tone is basically, it is related somewhat to strength, and it's also related to flexibility that we're going to talk about next. But muscle tone is basically the readiness of a muscle to contract. And so we do see what's considered within the normal limits, like what's a normal muscle tone. But we also see the extremes. We see lower muscle tone, where we have muscles that if you touch them, they're very squishy, maybe very extensible. That's a muscle that is maybe characterized by that low muscle tone. And it's going to take a little bit more time and a little bit more work to get that muscle ready to do whatever you're asking of it. The flip side of that is our increased tone, increased muscle tone, also known as spasticity or hypertonicity. That's basically where a muscle is on or easily excited. Okay, it stems from the brain. And so we have a muscle that can become very overpowering, okay? And it will overpower other muscles that need to be turning on and create some dysfunction there. So muscle tone is somewhat related to strength, but not necessarily, okay? So talking about flexibility, here's my little friend. She's got her feet up in the air and she's almost gonna kind of, touch her knees to her forehead. This is like ultimate flexibility right here, okay? We have 360 joints in our body. What is a joint? A joint is where two bones come together. So if you see my skeleton guy there, he's got 360 little joints there, and each one of them need to be able to move through the full range of motion. So that is our expectation when we start looking at kids and how they're moving. That's our expectation for our own bodies. If you and I were to sit all day long in a chair, kind of looking like a chair, and then we didn't spend much time standing, maybe we went to bed and we curled up like a little roly-poly. And we did that for days on end, that can impact flexibility. So flexibility is something we're kind of born with, but you can lessen it or increase it by how you're using your body, okay? Every joint has a normal range. And again, loss of flexibility or even hyperflexibility can be a problem and create some challenges for some of our kids in progressing in their gross motor skills, and even just developing skills for sports and things like that, okay? Balance Another very important part to master, another important foundation kind of building block of motor skills. My little guy up here, he is perfectly balanced, okay? And what that means is that he has his center of gravity that usually falls around the belly button here, and it is perfectly centered over his base of support. That's the 2 feet that are down there on the ground. He's got 2 plates here. Everything is nice and even, and he's holding everything steady and upright. And our goal with balance is that we want to maintain center of gravity over our base of support and stay upright, okay? Now, my other little friend down here in the corner, completely different scenario, right? She's on 1 foot. So we've basically cut her base of support in half, right? Much harder. And she's got her leg out in front, and then she's got her arm out and back, kind of almost like she's counterbalancing, okay? And this is key to creating that balance. We have to keep it even so we can keep it all together and keep moving, okay? Balance is looked at in different positions like sitting and standing. Our young babies, or even, I have students here in Clovis Unified that I'm still working on sitting skills with them, sitting in that. And so having balance in sitting is very, very important. We also look at static balance, which means just holding a position, versus dynamic balance, which is much more demanding, maintaining balance as we move. There are 3 senses that come in and really help us with our balance. And the main one is generally vision. You and I every day, we're walking, we're doing our thing. Most people rely so heavily on their eyes being level and being able to tell the body, okay, well, if I'm starting to go this way, now my eyes are going this way and I'm off balance. So our vision is a very, very big part of that. But we also have 2 other systems that contribute. There is the inner ear, which is the vestibular, which senses sort of like movement forward, all different directions of movement, and also proprioceptors, which are in the joints and also on the skin. And those all give us information. So those 2 systems really step up to bat, like when our vision is occluded or if it's dark, then we start to rely on those. So all those things kind of contribute to balance. And then coordination. So coordination is the ability to use different parts of your body in a smooth and efficient manner, okay? Coordination comes from the lower part of the brain called the cerebellum, and it allows us to just really modulate motor movement. Sometimes we don't really think about all the different muscle actions that have to occur just for us to maybe lower down off the curb, okay? And what has to happen there is some muscles have to be on and some muscles have to be off, and they have to work perfectly in order for us to do that movement in a safe and controlled manner, okay? So that comes from that part of the brain called the cerebellum. And coordination can be challenged and worked on in, using the right and the left sides of the body, crossing midline, working in opposition, things like jumping jacks or scissors, crawling. That's why a lot of people talk about crawling in terms of skill development, is just really, making sure that they're getting that information that's crossing the brain to both sides and giving feedback and being able to learn how to do that in a smooth manner, okay? And if we have deficits in coordination, sometimes that's called ataxia, and ataxia can be like on a range. It can be very mild. It can also be very severe. But when there are deficits in coordination, we generally start to see movements that are either tremulous or jerky. We might see instability, meaning that the child has difficulty, catching their balance, or we might see clumsiness, where a child is, walking through a class, they can't seem to make it through the classroom without bumping into Susie and Peter and then stepping on their backpack. Okay, so very important. Okay, and body awareness and motion sense, these are all 2 more things that contribute to coordinated movement and balance. Like I said, they're all very intertwined. Body awareness relies on proprioception. Again, that's feedback from those sensory organs that are in your skin and in your joint, and they tell you where your body is in space, okay? And so that's a very important part of being able to plan a movement and execute a movement in a coordinated manner. We don't always get to just look and see where our body part is and then respond to it. We just naturally feel where it is and move it accordingly, okay? So body awareness is very important. And then that motion sense, and I think Anna will also be talking a little bit about both of these as well later. That's that vestibular system that we talked about earlier. It contributes to balance, okay? It's located in the inner ear. It is completely mature at birth. It's actually one of the only senses that's completely mature at birth, okay? Why? Because babies rely on that inner ear to find stable positions on their back or on their tummy. And it is also connected to reflexes as well, okay? So that motion sense is going to detect up and down, side to side movement, turning and rotation and all different kinds of things, okay? All right, so we are here to maybe a good stopping point where we can do some
Nikki, we can't hear you. We just lost you. So we're having a bit of technical difficulty. Let's see. Well, while Nikki's trying to figure out why we can't hear her, do anyone have any questions? You can put it in the chat right now if you do, and I apologize, in the question and answer if you do. Let's see. Nikki? I'm going to try and...
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
That's okay.
Okay. All right. So do I want me to go back to sharing the screen, and then do I need to pull up the Q&A or?
No, it's okay. I can see that we don't have any questions. So we're doing great. All right. So thank you, Nikki. That was so informative. Do you have, oh, we just lost you again.
Okay,
Anna,
can you hear me now?
Now we can.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I'm having some audio trouble. Can everybody hear me? Everybody's okay? Yeah, okay. All right.
I think we are.
Okay, so no questions. Did we have any questions or no?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, that was so clear. Thank you for.
Okay, great. So I'm going to keep going. We're going to go back to sharing.
Okay.
I apologize for the audio problems there. Okay. So now we'll get into a little bit more about our developmental milestones. And, you know, not knowing necessarily the ages of the children of our participants here, or maybe students that you work with, we are going to talk about the motor milestones. These are the building blocks, but I want you to remember that these are all different activities that can be practiced with children really of any age, even if they have mastered the skill, in order to develop strength or provide challenge for them. So we'll kind of, and we'll get a little bit further into the presentation, just talking about, you know, ways to challenge kids who are walkers already, who know how to run and do a lot of other things. So we'll be getting to that, okay? When we look at developmental milestones, on this list here at the very top is really what you're going to see with the youngest infants. These are the reflex movements. They come out of the womb with these movements. They are primitive, they are involuntary, they come from the lower part of the brain, and they're really meant for survival. And what we want to see with those reflex movements, that they are there, they may be there, fully present when they're born, or they may develop right after birth, but over time we do want to see them integrate and see them disappear and kind of be overcome by voluntary coordinated motor movement, okay? Because if reflexes persist, we know that they can interfere with the development of other typical skills, okay? What we see here at 0 to 6 months, what do we see? Babies on their back, and we're going to talk a little bit about back and tummy time and sitting, but this is probably the most common position that we see babies in. They're on their backs and their heads are starting to turn, they're starting to reach their arms up, maybe they're starting to pick up their feet. We want babies on their tummies at this young age, and this helps with control or with developing that head control. Some babies will also start to do some rolling as well from their tummies to their backs, and starting to sit with support. When we look at the supine skills, which are also another word for laying on their back, our friend here is now reaching up to his feet and grabbing, and there's all kinds of things that are really awesome happening here. Again, we talk about just the head movement, the eye-hand coordination of being able to actually get the hand to grab the foot and not miss it. We have an amazing core workout happening here as well, and also a chest and shoulder strengthening activity as they're reaching up against gravity to grab and hold their feet. So this is a very easy one. Most families, this is without a question when they have an infant, or even if they have an older child with delays, this child probably spends a lot of time on their backs, whether it's for diapering or feeding or sleeping. Okay, so we know that children get a lot of time here, and it is important for a lot of strength on the anterior part of the body. We don't want to forget about strengthening the posterior part of the body, which is what tummy time is for, okay? And this one, I think, gets a little bit, I think a lot of babies struggle with it. A lot of families are afraid of it. But it is so important for so many things. It helps to develop strength of the head and the hips. Our little friend here, you can see how hard he's working to lift that head. In fact, his eyebrows are really doing a lot of work, and his forehead too, to try to get his head up. And then he's got really good weight bearing through his forearms. He's got his one arm's a little closer, one arm's a little further away. So he's really working hard to kind of improve that strength of the neck and the back. It also strengthens the hips as well. And one of the things that we need to remember about tummy time, and why, like I said, this is not just a skill to work on for kids who are 3 or 6 months old. This is a skill that is incorporated. I still have children in junior high and high school who participate in activity time on their tummies, or maybe prone on a wedge or over a ball. Working on those skills is because we know that it's important to develop that strength, but it also helps to develop the curve, the S curve of the spine. And you can see I have the picture here. When we're born, we come out, right? Because we were kind of all curled up inside the womb, right? And we have this nice C curve in our spine, okay? And then what needs to happen though over time for us to develop like an upright center of gravity that we can maintain, we have to develop this S curve here. And being on the tummy and then progressively into crawling are the skills that really help to develop that. They help develop strength in the back, but also the flexibility of the spine. So very important. I've included a YouTube video here. So if you go to the Google Drive and you pull up these handouts, you can go to this. I just kind of pulled in some videos. This pediatric therapist, she does a really nice job of just talking about if your baby hates tummy time. And like I said, it doesn't have to be babies. These are strategies we can use with kids of all ages to get them to tolerate certain positions, or even just to strengthen in certain positions. And she does a really nice job. So like tips to help there, having your baby on your chest. What's their most favorite thing to look at? It's you. Okay, so that's what they want to see. They love to smell you. They love to feel you. So if they're close to you, that is really motivating to them. Having them lay across their lap. I oftentimes will use the third one where we roll a towel or a blanket and place it under the armpits. And it just gives a little bit of lift to the chest, helps that weight come down to the hips, and it just makes it a little bit easier. And the same idea would be like to put them on a little bit of an incline with the head up and the hips down, okay?
And then whenever, and this is, applying to all different things, whenever you're working on something challenging with your kids, keep it short and sweet, okay? And it doesn't need to be a super long extended time for there to be benefit for your child, for them to feel successful and for them to get strength. So keep at it, be consistent. And like I said, it doesn't need to be long, end on success. And you can apply that really to anything. And then distraction is huge for all sorts of things in life with our kids and even for ourselves. Sitting skills. This is a great picture of a mom here. She's sitting right behind, her child. And, we're going to talk a bit about this later as well. We just talking about playing with our kids and how can we motivate them and encourage them. And I'm telling you, you're their favorite people, and you getting involved and giving your time and your attention to them is huge in getting them interested in participating in whatever it is that you want them to participate in. So here we have mom, she's sitting with baby. She's got her legs around him. Now, when we talk about sitting, we usually are, a younger child's going to need support up higher, maybe right under the armpits. And then as they get stronger, we can move the arms down. Remember, it's that cephalocaudal principle, okay? Your legs are around the baby to kind of create a little border, a barrier if they do lose their balance. You can practice all sorts of things here, like even like laying all the way down to the side and then helping them practice to come up. And then pretty soon, I remember this with my last baby, coming in and in the morning and put him to bed last night, but he was laying on his back or however he slept. And then he's sitting up in the morning and there he is, he's got it. So those are all really important skills. Those are those transition skills to work on too, when you're looking at these individual skills. How do we get from one to the other? Okay. And again, those YouTube videos there talk about sitting for young babies and have just some really good demonstrations and good ideas for you, or maybe somebody who could use them. Okay. Moving on, 6 to 12 months. Now we're rolling both directions from back to front. They're doing those transitions like we talked about, moving in and out of sitting. Okay. They're crawling, which is technically kind of like combat crawl on their tummy. They're not quite strong enough yet to get up all the way up off of the ground. And then creeping is really kind of what we know as crawling. It's on all fours, okay? And a little note about crawling and creeping, not every baby or child will hit this skill, and it's okay. It's okay if they don't, okay? We have some kids that skip it. We like to see it. It's a good, I think, to practice even for kids who are already walking, but it's okay if they don't. And at some point, it becomes a lot more work to try to get them to do it when they start to discover other successful ways to get around, okay? So pulling to stand, they start to get curious. What's up on that chair? What's up on that couch? What's mom doing up there? I want to get up where she is. And cruising as well. That's that sidestepping while they're holding on. Okay, and then pretty much then they start to stand without support, and then it's a whole new ball game. So walking, between 1 and 2 years, we generally will see children walk independently. Again, this is a rough timeline and every kid is on a different pace. They should maybe start to stoop down to the ground and be able to pick up something and come back up without losing their balance. They may scoot on ride toys. I love ride toys. Just the act of getting on and off of a ride toy themselves is very challenging. They have to stand on one leg and lift the other leg over and get on it. A lot of kids, when they get on those ride toys, they're going to push backwards first, and that's okay too. It's all right. It's still strengthening. It's still good movement. It's that motion. They're getting that motion input into their inner ear, which is very wonderful for them to get. They might start to be exploring stairs, maybe not on their own feet, because it depends on how tall they are, but maybe they're crawling or creeping up the stairs, kicking a ball, fast run. They start to walk really fast and then they start to run. And I did put this little video in here. It's pretty cute. It's like a 90-second video a family made of a baby that goes from crawling to walking. And it's really cute because it kind of shows the stages of it. It's really short, but it just gives you some ideas. And we have our friend here in this picture. And you can see, you know, he's a new walker. And how do we know that? And we see, when I say new, it's not because he's one, we just can tell. I have some children that I work with at school who are older who walk very similarly to this because they're using the same strategies, okay? Their feet are far apart from each other instead of being close, so their base of support is wide. And they also have their hands up. And why are their hands up? Because this is helping with balance, but also if I fall, they're ready to go, okay? So that's what's going on here with the walking, and we just continue to, as they get better, the arms will come down to the sides and the feet will come together. Those are the things that we want to work towards. All right, developmental milestones, 2 to 3 years. Now we're starting to get into the jumping skills. Okay, so I get a lot of questions about jumping and how do we work on jumping, and jumping is a lot of work. It takes a lot of strength. It takes a good amount of body awareness. You know, you really want to make sure that you focus on keeping the feet together. I tell my kids, glue your feet together, glue them together. And if you're trying to help your child or your student learn how to do some jumping, a lot of times what we find is that jumping off of something is easier. It's eliminating the first half of the jump. Okay, you don't have to get the up part, you just have to get the off and down. And so we start to, you know, kind of maybe practice that way with a few phone books taped up, or maybe off of a curb, depending on how tall the child is. But yeah, you're starting to see those jumping skills. Maybe they're jumping forward and jumping backwards. They might be balancing on one foot for a few seconds, which is kind of a precursor skill to actually doing the stairs on their feet. Okay, maybe it's going to be a precursor to some kicking skills, and of course to hopping on the legs. So those are kind of like the skills before. Like again, we don't need to worry about the 2 to 3 years, but these, when we look at how do we progress skills, you know, that standing on one foot is kind of a foundational skill for a lot of things down the way. Okay. Beginning pedaling on a tricycle, that means maybe they're getting on, they're slowly moving those pedals. It's not going very fast. They might go back to feet on the ground, okay? And they're probably not navigating, because when we talk about simple versus complex, having the legs go and steer and not run into anything is quite complex for these kids, okay? Galloping, ball control skills, okay? Again, stairs without support, maybe they're starting to do alternating feet on each leg, okay? And then imitating bilateral movements. So very appropriate, we start to practice that in a lot of our preschool classrooms, you know, with lots of songs and, you know, the wheels on the bus, and they do all the movements and the kids love to follow along. And it's because they're ready to follow along and do those movements. And here we have our friends on the playground here. We start to look at 3 to 6 years. These are typical preschool skills, lower, you know, young elementary kids. But again, if your child or your student is delayed, this may be stuff that they're still working on in 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade. Okay. But I love my picture here. We've got our friend with his walker. He's got some friends helping him, and then we've got somebody on the stepping stones behind him and somebody on the trampoline. And this is really kind of what it should look like at recess time. Lots of different activities happening. And, you know, lots of hopping, kicking a ball with 2-step start, you know, skipping, more accurate ball skills, bouncing and catching a ball. So you're now putting 2 skills in, you know, in a row in succession. Steering, stopping, starting on the tricycle, obstacle courses, somersaults, and then maintaining momentum on the swing. That's a big one. I still get sad when I think about my youngest said to me, "Mom, I don't need you to push me anymore." That was a sad day. So anyways, again, doesn't necessarily need to be pinned to these years, but these are skills that we tend to see, and this is sort of the progression, and it's something that you can apply to your students wherever they are. And this is another one of those things in terms of when we look at categories of gross motor skills, there's all different kinds of things, and there's all different ways to incorporate and challenge gross motor skills with your children, with your students. There's locomotor skills, which is movement. So that's walking, sidestepping, jumping, hopping, galloping, leaping, running, skipping, I mean, you name it. And so there's a lot of different ways to move our bodies, and we want to make sure that our kids are getting a good opportunity and a wide range of experiences. And then those non-locomotor movements, which means we're not necessarily moving like our body like across the playground, but we're going to stand in place and kind of do all these different movements like bending, pulling, twisting, turning, shaking, balancing on one leg. So you can incorporate those into some other skills as well. And then those manipulative skills, which is really that object control, another whole area of gross motor skills. And all of these things, as kids get older and their skills get better, it's a lot. What we start to see is that kids are going to be starting to participate in PE at school. And so they get gameplay, opportunity, object control, starting to work on some very basic sports theory and skills and things like that. Or maybe it's, maybe your child's going to get into karate or dance or swim. I mean, that when we start to look at like, where do we go from here? It's really then looking at what is your child interested in, your student, what are they interested in? And then how can we keep them moving so they continue to get strong and maintain all of their skills. Okay. So the role of playing, playing is really how children develop gross motor skills. I love my job because that's what I get to do. When I worked at Valley Children's, I can't tell you how many scavenger hunts I went on and how many bug hunts and how many jungles we went through, because that was what my, patient wanted to do, what they were interested in. And we found a way to create these really fun environments, because kids, they're not going to sit there and just do what I do at the gym with my 5-pound weight, right? It needs to make sense to them. Okay. It needs to be fun and engaging for them. And so really, that's what we want to create, these opportunities for play and for fun. We know that they need safe spaces and experiences, to be able to really grow and challenge themselves. But the other key part of that is the interaction with you. If you're their teacher, if you're their parent, that's huge. They want your attention. They want your encouragement. They want your modeling. Okay. Do whole family activities. You are really the best teacher that they could have because you're number one in their eyes. And so thinking about incorporating the 5 senses and what you're teaching, like what is their strength? So when I really, I worked with a lot of children, but it really came back to me when, during the pandemic working on Zoom, because I realized that there's definitely some kids who, when I say work with their senses, some kids really need to see a motor movement in order for them to be able to attempt it or be successful in practice. Some children are really just fine with you telling them and just hearing it. Okay. So you want to pay attention to your children, your students, whoever they are. How do they learn? Do they need to show them? Do they need you to repeat it? Okay. Do they need you to put your hands on their arm and show them how they move the arm? Okay. Because all kids are different. So those are using all the senses. Okay. And just keep it motivating and challenging. And yes, this is a hard part, I think, for some parents and some families. Is really, our kids have to struggle a little bit in order for them to get better. I think it's hardest when, kids are babies and they cry and they are in, positions that are hard for them. And we don't want our kids to suffer. We don't want them to be upset. But we also need to, on the flip side of that, understand that that's how we all grow, is with some safe, guided challenges, with support, and with success. And so being able to kind of come alongside and give that just right challenge to your student is really important, and it's necessary in order for them to continue to progress. So, and then just have fun. You just need to have fun. All different ways you can do that. music and sounds. I mean, again, being on Zoom during the pandemic, I was always laughing at what I would hear. You know, you get a peek into these families and what they're doing at home and some of the music that they listen to, but this is what was motivating, you know, and I love it. It's parents listening to their kids and seeing what they respond to. So very important, different textures, you know, go outside, be in nature. There's bark, there's leaves, water, dirt is okay. You know, it's like getting really kind of using all the senses. To take rotation of toys. You know, I hear a lot of families talk about this, and it's true. Novel for kids, things that are new are way more interesting. So if you can kind of come up with a system where you've got toys that are kind of coming in and toys coming out, or new activities that you do for a while, and then maybe you come in and put those away, and then different activities, same sort of thing. So just kind of keep changing it up. Don't forget about your local park or going outdoors, you know, weather allowing, of course, but huge, you know, the local park has, you know, all these wonderful things. They've got the ladders, they've got the slides, they've got the tunnels, they've got the rocking horses, you know, and they were swings. I mean, all designed to really give kids that like input and activity that they need to kind of use those senses and develop their skills. Okay. And just be consistent and purposeful with them. Okay, just basic tips here for non-walkers and walkers, and we're going to kind of go into it a little bit, but really when you talk about non-walkers, you want to really focus on the floor time. If floor doesn't work, an elevated surface is fine. If bed, okay, doesn't matter. So it just really is up to you in terms of how big the child is, how safe it is for you to move them. Incorporate a variety of positions. Make sure your surfaces that you're working on are soft and clean and safe. And then also providing stable objects to either lean against or to pull up to. And then for our walkers, looking at those uneven surfaces. You know, I love using like pillows and things in all different, you know, we got to play so much on Zoom with our kids during the pandemic, and, you know, pillows, you pull those couch cushions off, you know, and start making a fort or jumping on it or walking over or crawling over, all different kinds of things. So that you kind of, what we're doing there with those pillows is we're now taking a nice firm surface like the carpet or the kitchen floor, and now we make it squishy, and it just adds another element. Okay. Playing on the knees or in half kneel. I love working on this with my kids of any age. It's a really great strength and balance activity, good for the core. Forts, build some forts. Let me tell you, lots of work there. It's a big mess in your living room, but I'll still never forget the last one I did at my house. It was super fun, and the kids just get so much out of it. You know, they're lifting the blankets, and then they're figuring out how to hold things, and then they got to get on the floor to get inside and get low, and then it's dark, right? And then so you've got some body awareness concepts and things like that. So it's really nice to do that. Really fun. It doesn't require a lot of equipment or any sort of expense. Just use what you have. Dancing is, you know, fun. Obstacle courses. Again, some more tips to promote body awareness. Swings and scooters. Ride toys. You know, ride on toys. Big yoga balls. Really fun. You know, in a safe environment where you can have them sitting on it, laying on their back, laying on their tummy, all different ways. To get that proprioceptive input, playing in the dark like we talked in the tent. Pointing to body parts, close your eyes, okay, point to your nose, point to your ears, so that they're learning where their body is in space. Simon Says games, copying motor movements, listening, you know, all of those sorts of things. I love heavy work for kids for strengthening and for core strength, and it also does help body awareness. You know, have them, you know, push that laundry basket down the hallway, have them rearrange your kitchen chairs. Anything like that just is really great for activating the core. And then jumping and hopscotch and trampoline, all those are really great skills for working on balance, working on strength, endurance. Hopscotch, you're switching from 2 feet to 1 feet. You have to anticipate, you have to maintain your balance. These are things that you can create in your backyard with tape or chalk. Okay, so here's some obstacle courses that I looked up online. You know, I just Googled indoor obstacle courses. These are, you know, they look fancy, but they're really not. They're very basic. It's using what the household has. Empty Amazon box there, couple of kitchen chairs. Get yourself some some blue tape at, Home Depot or Target. You can't go wrong with it. And create a course. There's no right or wrong way to do it. And then when they get really good at it, you just tell them, like, okay, now I want you to go backwards. Do it in reverse. Or I want you to do it as slow as you can. Change it up. Put on the music. Just so start to introduce some variables that kind of change how they have to adapt. Okay. And then here's some basic gross motor play items. And these are lists of things that I've made. And the Amazon links there are links that we created for our families during the pandemic to go to, just you don't have to purchase it, just to give some ideas about some things to try or even make in your own home. But hula hoops, dollar store, like I said, tape for making lines, rolled up socks, laundry baskets, you name it. You can do so much with those things. So it doesn't require a lot of expense. And then online resources for you guys. I know some parents, so a lot of these channels on YouTube are very appropriate for preschool and elementary age children to watch and follow along. But if you don't want to have your child having more screen time, which I think everybody is very, cautious of and really wants to make sure they're monitoring that, then you can go on there and you can watch what they do, and that will give your mind some ideas of things that you can incorporate just in one-on-one play with your children. Okay. I have the flag house, that's the therapy balls, yoga balls, same thing. That PDF there has a lot of great ideas about how to use the ball, how to use it for games, things like that. And then the pediatric APTA. The APTA is the American Physical Therapy Association, and it has a lot of really great resources there, like 10 things to do this weekend to, play with your family, stuff like that. So lots of different resources there. There's a Pinterest page as well. So yeah, one of the good things we can say from the pandemic is that there's just been an explosion of resources that are very easily accessible, which is really wonderful for all of you. So thank you very much. I really appreciate your time tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
I don't see any in the question answer right now, but I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that information. I love that you are telling families to use what they have or just get outside, right?
It's so important,
Yeah.
It's easy. It really is simple,
Mhm.
and sometimes we get caught up in these ideas in our own minds about we got to have this special equipment or this or that. And it's really, we have so much around us that kids will love to do and be a part of as long as you're with them. So.
Right. Oh, here we go. Here's in the chat. If a parent has concern about their child's gross motor skills and have tried things at home with no improvement, what should they do next?
Yeah, so that is my coworker. They're asking that question, and I love that. And I almost made a slide to talk about that tonight as well. I would say the first step would be to talk with your pediatrician and really get some input. As you know, the pediatrician will have that experience, and depending if we're talking about a child who's like a newborn, who we're expecting those motor milestones to be occurring, or an older child that's maybe behind, I think your pediatrician should be your first stop. And based on that, maybe there might be an indication for some either occupational therapy or some physical therapy, because we expect that children will continue, as long as they're healthy, that we're going to continue to see growth and development as long as we're giving them that time and that practice. Okay.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Good comments. All right, Anna, it is all you, our fabulous OT.
And thanks, Nikki. It's amazing, and I feel so fortunate working with you. And thank you, Leanne, for putting all this on. just being our community liaison, and we feel lucky to have you in our lives, and all these families are lucky to have you as a resource as well.
Very
Aw,
lucky.
thanks, friend.
All right, I started my career toward occupational therapy at University of New Hampshire, and I've been an occupational therapist for about 30 years. So I'm lucky that I still love my job, and I've worked in the schools, just like Nikki. I worked at Valley Children's Hospital. I've done in the home, and right after they come out of the NICU, I've seen them. Gosh, I worked in Riverside County and inner city Boston Public Schools, and then I landed here at Clovis Unified. And so this has been for about half my career here, and I feel very fortunate to have a great team to work with. You know, I've worked with a lot of the neurodiverse populations, people that have had just kind of neurological deficits in general, some with diagnoses, some not, some with orthopedic concerns. Nikki and I work with a range of children in the schools. I also work at our Clovis Infant and Toddler program, City Kids, and every school district has a 0 to 3 program, and so kind of lucky to get them very early so we can work with them and get that development going. And that's another, when I was looking at that question about how kids can, you know, get their concerns met, pediatricians will also talk to City Kids as far as kids in Clovis Unified. But if you're in a different unified school district, they should have resources too, like an infant toddler program. So I really enjoy that. Thank you again for spending time with us this evening, and I'm hoping you're stretching, maybe taking a little sip of water, enjoying yourself as you listen and watch. I will go to sharing my screen as well. Okay, sensory is a buzzword, and it always kind of has been. It's very vague for people. What does sensory mean? Do I need to see an occupational therapist? What is normal development? Which is development that's been altered somehow. So I'm going to try to answer the what, the why, the how of sensory as best I can. And then I can also give you my email at the end. So if you were to have any questions that weren't answered tonight, feel free to call me. I'm a resource for whoever you need, whether it's a family member, maybe it's an older adult that you're working with or that you have in your household, or a family member, or a friend. And I really wanted to answer the questions, kind of look at what is sensory, processing, what's dysfunction, what are preferences. This is a very large understanding, and I'm going to try to get it as succinct as I can and just go from now. As I go, please feel free to put any questions that you have. The objective is just to understand what sensory is, as far as what an occupational therapist defines it as. You may think of it like Nikki said, the 5 senses. Yes, that's part of it. You got it. And then we're going to go into some other senses too that we as occupational therapists dive into a little more deeply. I also want to add some user-friendly strategies, like Nikki did such a great job, and see if we can help you support whoever you're working with or caring for. And then look at sensory needs and just talk about, is it a sensory preference? What is sensory? And so we'll go on from there. Sensory integration theory, which we have as part of our occupational therapy education, is just that neurological process, taking in information about the body and the environment, just like Nikki was talking about, that feedback loop of our body, taking in information. When I'm working with the educators that are amazing, they often talk about reading, writing, and arithmetic as the basics. And then us as occupational therapists come in and say, actually, those are extremely complex processes. And do they have that strong foundation of sensory integration? As we'll talk about, you'll see where that basis is and what we look at as OTs to support kids in education or kids is just in general development. Our challenge as OTs is just to enable all kids to get through childhood and school with their spirit intact and self-aware and confident. Isn't that an ideal place for all of us? I like this pyramid of learning, and you can look up here. I know it's kind of a smaller triangle, but when we look at the sensory motor piece, kind of that postural piece that Nikki was talking about, using two sides of the body, planning our body, that's the second tier of this motor development of learning. Where OT is kind of focused in on is this foundation of the central nervous system. Where are our five senses? And then we include that vestibular and that proprioception that Nikki spoke of. And I'll kind of add a little bit. I mean, she's amazing. She already defined a lot and gave you a lot of great activities. And OTs and PTs use both of those activities for different reasons. She might call it strength. I might call it more body awareness. It can be both. So it's really important to work with the team like I do in Clovis Unified, like the therapists do at Children's. We're always working with our colleagues, our psychologist friends, our teacher friends, our administrators, our instructional assistants, people who have eyes and ears. We just kind of get to be the expertise in one particular area. So we really rely on you as family members and as staff members to say, hey, this doesn't seem quite right. How can I help support this? So that central nervous system that Nikki was talking about, the brain, cerebellum, the brainstem, that's what keeps us going. All the sensations coming in, figuring out, and putting in output. So you can see all the way up here is academic learning. So Nikki and I really work down here to get these foundational skills. It doesn't mean that if you have a difficulty in one of these lower levels that you can't move up the pyramid, but there may be a little bit of a stop here, the eye-hand coordination, if you don't have that postural awareness or security, or you don't have an idea of where your body is in space. So that's kind of how I look at that learning pyramid. So here we are, right? Top 5. But wait, there's more. Movement. You know, those kids need to get to the playground, like Nikki was saying, and a lot of playgrounds in our schools have taken away the swings, have taken away the things that we spin in a circle that give us those proprioception and that vestibular input. So a lot of times what I'll recommend is families go to the park before you get to school. I know it's hard to get out the door and get dressed and get the backpack, but if you could take an extra 15 minutes, and I know some people here that are participating have done that with their kids. And it seems like an extra 15-minute step, but maybe that's just a walk to school, or maybe that's hitting the playground for 15 minutes before you get to school so that your body is aware, it's alerted, and ready to learn. We like the vestibular system to provide our information about where our body is in space, tells us that direction, and like we were talking about, that inner ear. It's very related, the vestibular and the visual together. As you can imagine, if you're on a roller coaster, how your vision changes. If you're on a swing or something circular, how your vision changes with vestibular movement. That means your head is moving. And you can see how some kids that don't have vision may have difficulties with the vestibular system because one of those senses is taken away. So where that dysfunction comes in is when you look to your pediatrician to look into occupational therapy to get some ideas about how you can supplement a system that might be absent. We go into those semicircular canal, the utricle, saccule, and the cochlea. Go ahead and look those bio terms up. Here is another kiddo balancing, like Nikki was saying, enhancing that muscle tone and upright. And I'm going to smooth through a few of these that Nikki's already talked about. I see a lot of kids with vestibular differences, and I'm not saying they have a diagnosis, and I'm not saying they have a dysfunction, but they're on the back of their chairs or rocking. And what they're doing, they're activating the vestibular system so that they can attend better. So as an OT, I come in and I say, why are they rocking? What is the purpose of that movement? I see that they're still doing their work. Hey, he's doing something or she's doing something that's helping her body learn. And so what do? We just put some tennis balls on the back and say, hey, as long as you're safe, right? It's going to depend on their development and their attention and safety, but go to town as long as you're working. Muscles and joints, proprioception, those receptors that are deep in the skin, like Nikki was saying, those joints have deep receptors. And the reason OTs talk about proprioception and PTs too is in those joint receptors, it goes right to your brain and goes to the calming system within your body. So why do runners have to run? It's calming for them. It's regulating, something that you'll hear about with OTs looking at sensory regulation. How do you regulate your body and how do you feel ready to learn? There we go. Just assistant body motor planning. I loved this website that I found, and it just found some ways to provide that proprioceptive activities at home. We also use these in the schools, whether it's like Nikki was saying, pushing the laundry basket down the hall. Well, the OT would say, hey, let's add about 5 pounds of books to that. So they really feel their body. So it increases that resistance of work, like Nikki was saying, the heavy work. Can you pull a wagon, sweep the floor? Can you do animal walks where you're really having to figure out where your body is and where your joints and your muscles will be working? Can we do some wheelbarrow walks? Can we do some push-ups? Can we do some wall push-ups? That's another thing I would really love to do in the schools, because I can line up all the kids on the hallway and we do a wall push-up, and that gets all my joints that I would use for writing. There's some great ideas here on this website, Kid Master Skills. There's yoga poses. There's a variety of activities in there. One you'll see a lot of OT is squish and be squished. I love this, getting bear hugs, squishing between the cushions. I call it, let's make a sandwich, and the kid lays down, and, I have them request it from me, and I push their beanbag on them and say, what do you want with your sandwich? Do you want turkey? Do you want tofu? Do you want lettuce? And having them request what they want, that gives their whole body a calming way to learn. And that's a little trick of the trade. I want to go a little more into touch, only because the skin is our largest organ, and there can be a lot of interference with touch. And I just wanted to talk about how we as OTs look at touch. There's also some difficulties with defensiveness, and that's a term that just describes how some adults, how some children just have a defensiveness to different textures. Perhaps you don't like the tag in the back of your shirt. Maybe you cut them all out. Maybe you don't like the seam of your sock. Something as benign as that can be very defensive. And maybe a kiddo could just focus on that. And so we can attend to what the learning is. And that's what we try to figure out. About touch, we talk about handling with care or rubbing someone the wrong way. There's a lot of idioms in the English language about touch. I need some personal space. You're being a space invader. Don't touch me. Get back. And I like this discussion because we need to know and we need to teach our children what's appropriate touch and handling. Some kids that have not had that early on may not understand what is typical touch. If they were on the NICU for 3 months, the neonatal intensive care unit, and all they had were people coming at them with needles or maybe a G-tube, that's their experience of touch. So we really need to support them in understanding what is appropriate touch, what is touch that feels like they're handled with care. Of course, the tactile system does include those receptors, and it also includes a discriminative touch, which is it hard, soft, spiky, pleasant, silky, okay? The function of the skin is to alert us. Does a bee land on us? Do we run away? Or does it give information about the environment? We're all sensory beings, right? What did you do this morning to get ready? Did you turn on some music? Did you go for a walk? Did you cuddle in that bed a little bit longer because those blankets felt so good because it was warm? Did you go outside because you like the cool? Okay, and then what are you doing to feed your sensory systems right now? Are you rocking in a chair? Are you laying down and listening? Are you only looking and not listening? What are you doing to increase your ability to be present tonight? I'm a big fidgeter and doodler. You can see on my desk right now that's how I pay attention. You can't see it, but that's how I attend to what I'm. That's a kinesthetic learner. My educator friends will say, "Hey, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. We got to work together, figure out how these sensory beings, like Nikki was saying, what is that strength?" Okay. On our link to the handouts at Google Drive, there's an alert program. It's an oldie but a goodie. And what I'd love for you to do, if you can, is bring that up. And it's just a program called How Does Your Engine Run? And your body is the engine. Basically, it's an entire curriculum that is helpful to understand and teach kids. Are you like on high petrol? I can't hear anything. I'm so mad. Am I really low and sleepy and that I can't attend you what you're doing, or I'm right in the middle? So when you're looking at this checklist, and I will bring it up on the screen as well, sensory by sensory system. But if you can kind of mark the items or take a look at it and see, are those activities that increase or decrease your state of alertness? I have found that I might mark both, just depending on the time of day, depending on the activity. But if you could just take a moment to look at that for a minute, and I'll bring up the first system and we can talk about it just a moment. As you're looking at it, I would love for you to kind of say, gosh, I guess I am more of a movement person, or I didn't know I was more of a visual person. And maybe you already know that. That's great. Okay, one of the first things is an oral motor input. Thinking about how, when you have something in your mouth, see a lot of kids with pencils or pens in their mouth while they're thinking or where they're writing. That's a kiddo I see, oh, that oral motor input is helping their body. How do you feel when you suck on hard candy, drink a milkshake? Do you do this when you're thinking? Do you take a nice slow breath? Is that oral motor input increasing your alertness or decreasing alertness? The reason I'm going through this is I want you to think about what you do for yourself, so then you can be a detective as you're watching your kiddos, whether you're working with them or whether you're in their house, is just understanding what their behavior is telling you. Frequently, our kids will show us the way. They'll let us know what input feeds their system. Are you a mover? Do you need to rock? Do you need to push your chair back? Do you need to do the yoga and the running, or you can't function the next day or that night? Do you need to go right to the gym after work because you know if you just go home, you're just going to sit on the couch for the rest of the evening? Maybe you like that vestibular proprioceptive input that feeds your system. Or do you just do something very small like sitting with your crossed leg and your other foot is bouncing? Maybe you're tapping your toe or tapping your leg or something just to keep you a little more engaged. Do you have tactile input, touch? A lot of times the twisting of the hair. Maybe you need to wake up with a warm shower, or maybe you need a warm shower before you go to bed. Imagine that sensory system just getting fed to help you be a better you. Do you need that full massage like I do? For listening, I see kids respond to classical music, and I also see kids respond to hard rock music. They can be calming or alerting. How do you respond? What do you put on maybe when you're taking a walk or when you're driving your car? What increases your alertness and what really kind of grates on you? Could it be the fluorescent lights above that have that buzz and you can't work and you don't know why? I see that very frequently with the kids I work with. We don't feel like it's a sensory auditory input, but for them, that's the only thing they can focus on. So frequently as an OT, I will go in and look at the environment. Is there a fan in the corner that nobody else hears but my student? Maybe it doesn't bother me, but for them, that's just throwing them off balance. And once again, we all have good and bad days, right? So one day I might be able to not listen to the fan, but on a tough day, maybe I didn't sleep well last night, that fan's really gonna throw me off. So that's where the OTs come in and look at that. How do you react to that nail scratching on a chalkboard or the fire siren or a constant dog barking? Those might increase your alertness or might decrease your ability to function. Visual, for me, it's very relaxing. Watching a fireplace, a lava lamp, a sunset. I dim the lights, I'm a low light. Some people need highlight or they'll fall asleep. So what does your child show you they need? Are they in their bedroom with their blanket over the head to decrease the visual above? How about looking at a cluttered desk or a countertop or your kitchen counter? Does that visual input increase your stress or decrease your stress? Different ways to look at it. I see someone here is in the chat. Okay, we're good. We're gonna go to the next one. Okay, so once again, we all have sensory needs. We need those tools to prepare our body for learning. If there's anyone that had any questions about this, or why does my kid do this more frequently or less frequently, please put that in the questions. So maybe I can give you some ideas. And as we go along, hopefully I'll answer more. And the reason I look at that is some kids we may label as sensory seeking. They're seeking one particular. I hear a lot of, oh, he's so visual. He won't sit and write, but he just wants to watch the visual all day. To me, I had to try to structure that of how can I meet that visual need and then also take a break and get with the adult needs. Because in school, you know, it's not always kid driven. Sometimes it's teacher driven. And it's a nice balance that OTs kind of work with our staff to figure out, hey, can we give a little of this, a little visual to meet that sensory need before you put the demand on them? Or does this child need a visual schedule so that they can check the box because they're a kinesthetic learner? Are you a to-do list kind of person? We do that with our kids as well. Okay, just wanted you to look at those subtle little things that you do to maintain your alertness. Like I said, you can be a little hypoactive or hyposensitive, or you can be hypo or hyper, right? Hypo is low, hyper is high, and we would love to always be in the middle, even though we know that's not realistic, right? But we try to increase the environment, increase the activities so that our kids can be in that middle level. We don't want the flight, fight, freeze. Those kids that hide under the table or they scream to get away because the sensations are overwhelming. All right. Any kind of disturbances, neurological. So as OTs, we have strategies, but you really got to look at the neurology. Maybe consult a neurologist if you're worried about how the sensory disturbances are impacting the people you're working with or raising. Or maybe you know a family member. You know, we look at functional MRIs, we look at brain scans, we look at the activity in the brain with our neurologist friends to figure out what's going on there. Did they just have a neurological episode, or was their stomach just hurting? That's a good question that we always get. And how are they meeting those functional emotional developments that impact that sensory process? So when I look at sensory concerns, I really recognize the fact. I respect the child's nervous system. They're showing me what they need. I look at environmental changes. What can I do to support their environment so that they can learn better? How can I accommodate? Maybe I don't take them to Target at the 5 o'clock rush hour. Maybe I take them to Target, on a random Tuesday at 10 when it's quieter. There's little strategies like that you can start thinking about once you learn where their sensory system is. And just like Nikki said, smile, laugh, and have some fun. That's the most sensory integrating. Activities, talked about heavy work before. I use balloon fidgets. They're very simple. I don't know, we get the non-latex balloons, fill them with flour, and that's a fidget. Something you can give your child. Hopefully you can tie it tight enough and the flour doesn't come spilling out. But when you're out and about, gives them something to keep their hands busy, and it also is a calming proprioceptive activity. When we do letters and numbers, we add the tactile. We do it in sand. We do it with Play-Doh. Those preschool and kindergarten activities, this is not just in the purview of OT, but the kids that we work on and work with, and the families we work with, might need a little more structure in it and might need it more frequently than maybe some of the other neurotypicals that we see. I like a ooey gooey treasure hunt, which is getting Play-Doh or the firm therapy putty that you can find in medical supply places and hiding their favorite toys or hiding small objects. It's an activity that is very regulating because it gives you the proprioception. And then you're also working on some of those higher fine motor skills. We also use, both Nikki and I use therapy band. It's just that stretch band that you can get, and you can imagine how that helps with the proprioception and that muscle strength that Nikki talked about. A simple visual activity that I use is just make your own lava lamps. It's very simple. You just get a tall, thin, clear container, use a little vegetable oil, food coloring if you want or not, and Alka-Seltzer tablet. And that's a fun activity for math skills too, because you can do some measuring. So I try to do that within my schools where the kids are working on measurements and cups and understanding what a cup and a quarter cup and an eighth. And we do this, and then voila, they get a visual activity that can be calming and relaxing. This is on a resource later that we have, but it's called handsonaswegrow.com. Has some nice experiments on that. I'm a big fan of water, and this probably comes from being a mom as well. Water is clear and it dries. And the other thing about water that I love is for my kids that are a little more sensorially seeking, it has it might have a little smell, not a lot of taste, even though they tell me the water smells sometimes because they're very sensitive to it, but it takes away a couple of the taste and the smell. So that takes away two sensations. So they can just work with the water, whether it's this little one painting with water, which I love. The therapist made their name, made a little work, and they went to town with a paintbrush. The Learning Without Tears also does this with a wet, dry, try, which is the same kind of technique. Here they're doing measurements and they color the water, and what does blue and yellow make? So that's a really fun activity that I work with my preschool teachers and my kindergarten teachers and even high school teachers with kids at my preschool level, right? Because we can have all ages of development within a particular class that I'm working in. So it can really meet a lot of needs. I like this little girl because she's stirring. You know, she can put stuff from the outdoor. You got outdoor play, count your flowers, count your grass. You can get very creative with water there, and then we dump it out back onto the yard. I like the proprioceptive interventions because of that calming and relaxation to the brain. A lot of these Nikki talked about. I love the gardening, raking, digging. You know, think about when you've gone in the dirt. A lot of people like to rake leaves. Do you think Grandpa's out there raking leaves because it's calming? Probably. Maybe to get out of the house too, and maybe Grandma too. Some of the things that we use in the school-based routines are a few of these. I love stacking chairs and having them push them across the, across to the other side. It's so benign, but as an OT, when I see that, I'm like, wonderful. They're using functional activities that is in the classroom already. I haven't had to bring new specialized equipment, but they're getting the proprioceptive needs met. Can they stack the chairs? Can they push the chairs? Can they take their work to the back of the classroom? Then they get a movement break and they get a little sensory break, maybe from their demands. I like the carrying heavy books to the library. We pull that in the wagon and have them carry it. And, we want to make sure it's not too heavy for them, but the just right 10% heavy is perfect for them. These are some vestibular activities, very much what, could put a roller coaster. That sounds great. But you can imagine as you age, the need for roller coasters and that up and down and fast and slow, it really changes, our inner ear changes. So we want to get those vestibular activities early so that the kids can really integrate their vision with their vestibular. And then what does that do? It increases our vision so we can track as we're reading a book. So we can track as we're looking up at the board. Very related. Here's some of my fun things. Bouncing on the ball, back of a chair, the ball. She's looking up, love that smile. Always checking in with the kid, getting that recognition. Having them understand that I give you a little bit, you give me a little bit. Have them stop, give them a high five to start the activity again, or signal more, or say please, or say thank you, some kind of interaction. And that's where I work closely with my speech and language pathologist friends, because when kids are moving, we see a lot of increase in alertness, and that does elicit a lot of language. I love the little sit and spin for this friend, and I love rocking chairs. Many of the schools that I work with have some kind of rocking chair or a gliding chair. Of course, we have to watch for safety, but that is very regulating. I love these bear walks, crab walks, any kind of animal walks. Okay, any questions? I'm just jamming along here.
I think we're doing okay so far.
Okay.
Thanks.
Wonderful. The other term I hear a lot, and I get a lot of questions as an OT, is sensory diet. What is a sensory diet? Does my kid need a sensory diet? I just want to take a few minutes to talk about it a little bit because it can be very helpful for kids. But I want to make sure you understand what this means. When they're talking about a sensory diet, is which one of those activities that I just spoke about, using the 5 senses plus 2, right? Your typical 5, vestibular and proprioceptive. What of those senses can be met throughout the school day, just like you'd have a snack? So a little snack of a sensory diet, maybe we get up and we jump times and then we start our reading lesson. That's just something that a teacher can include into the activity. A parent can include a little bit of a sensory diet, right? It's not food, it's a sensory activity, really. Maybe we'll have them sit on a therapy ball at the family table before dinner's ready. So we meet that motor need, we meet that social need, that social engagement, so that we can be available to be by our families and we're not running around the house because we're meeting that need at the family table. And then we have them sit on a chair so that they can eat safely. What can you do before bed? A lot of people like to do a routine at night. If you can think about what you did or what you've structured for young kids is, you know, we do dinner, a walk, bath, and bed. To me, that is a sensory diet before bed. So you're meeting the sensory needs. And that's all the sensory diet really is. The one thing I like though, is I think of a sensory diet like I think of water. You want to drink water before you're thirsty. Same with the sensory diet. I want to meet those sensory needs before I'm so dysregulated, so out of control that those sensory activities are not going to help me any longer. And I think that's where an OT can really pinpoint, hey, I've been seeing these steps. It looks like the behavior is going to escalate because that kiddo is telling me, hey, I'm not here. I'm not regulated. I'm not ready to learn. And let's get that sensory diet met. Okay, let me see. There's a question. Okay, so it says, this is a great webinar, but I'd like something similar for children with developmental issues. About not able to walk or talk, right? I'd love information and tools to help with movement activities to help her. She is limited with movement. What tools and sensory toys activities would improve for her? That's a great question. Thank you so much, because we don't know your specific needs, so I appreciate you sharing with us. What we do is, if there's less movement, like Nikki was saying, put them on the floor, put them in the blanket, put them in the safe space. Maybe the safe space for them is their crib, or maybe in your arms. So as an adult, what you can do is you can support them in your arms or in their favorite space, and then bring the sensory activities to them, whether it's a small visual, small auditory, maybe a variety of textures you can bring, and have them touch on their face and touch on their hand, touch on their feet, using that skin and that touch system to really meet those needs and learn about the world. A lot of kids that don't get that movement met initially, they learn through their mouths. That oral input is very essential. You think about when you're developing those understanding of what the world is like. We have our bottles, maybe we have the mom's breast, maybe we bring our fingers up to our mouth. Many kids will stay in that oral phase because it brings information to their brain about the world. So that's when we try to say, okay, is the oral meeting their learning needs, or is it something that's helping them regulate? Nikki, did you have anything to add to that?
I mean, in terms of when we start to look, and you know, I really appreciate this question, because this is really this is what I work with in terms of in the school systems. I work with a lot of children who are, you know, delayed in their skills, and I've worked that way as well, you know, at Valley Children's. And so what we're still working on those motor milestones. As I said, you know, it's like we're talking about a 6-month skill, but for a child that is delayed, it can still be a very appropriate skill that we want to still spend some time on. And a lot of times too, as children grow and they get heavier or they need more support, we do rely on some adaptive equipment to help us achieve certain positions for extended periods of time or to make it safer. And so if your child is not walking, the first thing I always look at with kids who aren't walking yet, even if they don't have head control, is always getting some sort of weight bearing for them, okay? And if they're little, sometimes that means you can hold them up against your body, you know, and support them and get their feet on the ground and get gravity going through their body so that they're getting that stimulation through their joints and through their bones. And for other children, it's using maybe a piece of equipment like a stander that will support the body themselves, you know, that you don't have to do it. It's a piece of equipment that does that as well. But I like to get kids, especially as they get older, if they're pretty far behind, I do rely a lot on equipment. We want those kids to get upright. We want them to get eye level with their peers at school. We want them moving somehow because we know that movement helps to develop cognition, okay? And that's how they learn. And so we want to try to encourage that however we can. Like I said, sometimes that's a piece of equipment, okay? And I love your idea for a webinar addressing this specifically. I think that would be great.
You know, and Nikki and Anna too, I think even for our loved ones that, you know, you might categorize as severely disabled, right? You know, they are wheelchair or, you know, bed bound. Again, I think we go back to the get outside, you know, like you said, put them in their wheelchair, they're, you know, get outside, a walk around the block, you know, it's good for you and for them. But I think our loved ones that, you know, that do have those significant needs, that change of atmosphere, right? And just that fresh air can be so good for them as well. And, you know, and if they don't have communication, well, that's where you're doing it too. And you can still have that inner, you know, look at the flowers, you know, and again, you know, that those senses that Anna loves to talk about, right? And so I think it can still be so engaging and so important to revert back to that fresh air and getting outside and socializing and, you know, seeing neighbors and engaging. I think that's just so important for families to do.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's, yeah, it's hard when you have a loved one with a, you know, really significant disability like that. And so, but I think it's important for everyone's mental health too, not just their physical health.
Oh, absolutely. It's another important piece of the puzzle. Yes.
And I think, you know, the other recommendation I'd have for you, if you have disruption of development, reach out to us, reach out to Leanne at the Family Resource Center. She has a lot of recommendations and resources and even other family members or staff members that she can direct you toward. Okay, I think I have one more. Let's see here. Oh, okay. Real quick, another question I get is, is it behavior? Is it sensory? How can I meet their need? How do I know they're not just tantruming and having a real difficult time, that it's not related to sensory? And that's where you need a team, because it's not one or the other. It's that feedback loop. Sometimes the behavior can increase the sensory sensitivities and it can go the other way. So that's where we rely on our team of school psychologists, maybe a neuropsychologist, a neurologist, to really look a little more deeply to see what is meeting that need. A lot of times the treatment for behavior and sensory can be very similar. It just depends on the kiddo. And that's where we work to really meet their needs as, you know, we see them and where they are in the environment, where they are developmentally. So that's what I'd recommend, that you look at that team. I have included these sensory resources. I kind of chose my top 10, 15. I included some websites. You know, there's so much information out there, and I know when we Google information, sometimes It's a lot. So I tried to give you my favorites. Here's some other ideas for sensory checklists that you can use. Feel free to use me as a resource. These are my favorite websites that I've included on that link with handouts. There's some real nice ones. This ateachabout.com gives you some really good occupational therapy activities to do with very little equipment, like Nikki was saying. Okay, any more questions?
I don't see any in there yet. You know, it's amazing to me as a parent how many more resources and how much more awareness there is about sensory needs now, don't you think, than even just a decade ago? You know, you can walk into, you know, just about any store, you know, Target or Walmart, and buy weighted blankets and, you know, things, right? Things that can really help your kiddo get through the day, even that we love, you know, if you like that pressure. But just I think it's helpful that families have that awareness, and professionals like you are bringing this information in parent-friendly terms, because yeah, we want to help our kids at home, but like you said, we often as parents think of it as therapy. Like, you know, we have to do this regimented thing, right? Lay them on the floor and lift their legs, and it's torturous. It's torturous for us, for them, right? Nobody wants to have to do that. And so I love your ladies' suggestions of making it fun and natural and just playing with your kids. Thank you for that.
Definitely our pleasure. And you know, there's not always a disruption of development. Like I said, we're all sensory beings. We all need to find what meets our needs, regardless of where we are developmentally. And we can support our kiddos that way too.
Sure. Even now in all the professional trainings, you know, we as adults go to, right? There's always fidgets on the table. Yeah. And it really does help.
So true.
Yeah, right. So it's a new world. So, well, I think we're done, everyone. Again, I just posted the link to the handouts again in the chat. Don't fret if you did not copy it. Again, tomorrow morning there will be an email, and I noticed that Nikki and Anna both put their contact information on their PowerPoints, and again, you can always reach out to the Family Resource Center if you have any questions. But thank you both so much. Honestly, this is one of our most popular topics every year, and so parents love it, and we are so grateful for you taking the time. All right.
Thank you, Leanne. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Leanne, and thank you for having us back again this year. We'll look forward to next time as well.
That's right.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Bye-bye.